Book of Enoch, chapter 89. And I observed during this time that thus 37 shepherds were overlooking, all of whom finished in their respective periods as the first. Others then received them into their hands, that they might overlook them in their respective periods, every shepherd in his own period. Afterwards I saw in the vision that all the birds of heavens arrived, eagles, the aves, kites, and ravens. The eagle instructed them all. They began to devour the sheep, to peck out their eyes, and to eat up their bodies. The sheep then cried out, for their bodies were devoured by the birds. I also cried out and groaned in my sleep against that shepherd which overlooked the flock. And I looked, while the sheep were eaten up by dogs, by the eagles, and by the kites. They neither left them their body, nor their skin, nor their muscles, until their bones alone remained, until their bones fell upon the ground, and the sheep became diminished. I observed likewise during the time that 33 shepherds were overlooking, completed in their respective periods 58 periods. Then were small lambs born of those white sheep, who began to open their eyes and to see, crying out to the sheep. The sheep, however, cried not out to them, neither did they hear what they uttered to them, but were deaf, blind, obdurate in the greatest degrees. I saw in the visions the raven flew down upon those lambs, that they seized one of them, and that tearing the sheep in pieces they devoured them. I saw also the horns grew up those lambs, and the ravens lighted down upon their horns. I saw too that a large horn sprouted out on an animal, one among the sheep, and that their eyes were open. He looked at them, their eyes were wide open, and he cried out to them. Then the Bella saw him, all of whom ran to him. And besides this, all the eagles, the aves, the ravens, and the kites were still carrying off the sheep, flying down upon them and devouring them. The sheep were silent, but the Debella laminated and cried out. And the ravens contended and struggled with them. They wished among them to break his horn, but they prevailed not over him. I looked on them until the shepherds, the eagles, the aves, and the kites came, who cried out to the ravens to break the horn of the Debella, to contend with him and to kill him. But he struggled with them and cried out, that help might come to him. Then I perceived that the man came who had written down the names of the shepherd, and who ascended up before the Lord of the sheep. He brought assistance and caused everyone to see him descending to the help of the Debella. I perceived likewise that the Lord of the sheep came to him in wrath, while all those who saw him fled away. All fell down in his tabernacle before his face, while all the eagles, the aves, ravens, and kites assembled, and brought with them all the sheep of the field. All came together and strove to break the horn of the Debella. Then I saw what the man who wrote the book, the word of the Lord, opened the book of destruction, of that destruction which the last 12 shepherds wrought. They pointed out before the Lord of the sheep, and they destroyed more those who preceded them. I saw also the Lord of the sheep came to them, taking in his hand the scepter of his wrath, seized the earth, which became rent asunder, while all the beasts and birds of heaven fell from the sheep and sunk into the earth which closed over them. I saw too that a large sword was given to the sheep, who went forth against all the beasts of the field to slay them. But all the beasts and birds of heaven fled away from before their face. And I saw a throne erected in a delectable land. Upon this sat the Lord of sheep, who received all the sealed books which were opened before him. Then the Lord called the first 7 white ones and commanded them to bring before him the first of the first stars, which precede the stars, whose form partially resembled that of horses. The first star, which fell down first, and they brought them all before him. And he spoke to the man who wrote in his presence, who was one of the 7 white ones, saying, Take these 70 shepherds, to whom I delivered up the sheep, and who receiving them killed more of them than I commanded. Behold, I saw them all bound, and all standing before him. First came on the trial of the stars, which being judged and found guilty, went to the place of punishment. They thrust him into a place deep and full of flaming fire, and full of pillars of fire. Then the 70 shepherds were judged, and being found guilty, were thrust into the flaming abyss. At that time, likewise, I perceived that one abyss was thus opened in the midst of the earth, which was full of fire, and to this were brought the blind sheep, which being judged and found guilty were all thrust into that abyss to fire on earth and burnt. The abyss was on the right of that house, and I saw the sheep burning and their bones consuming. I stood behold with emerged that ancient house, while they brought out its pillars, every plant in it, and the ivory enfolding it. They brought it out and deposited it in a place on the right side of the earth. I also saw that the Lord of sheep produced a new house, great and loftier than the former, which he bounded by the former circular spot. All its pillars were new, and its ivory new, as well as more abundant than the former ancient ivory which he had brought out. And while all the sheep which were left were in the midst of it, all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the heaven fell down and worshipped them, petitioning them and obeying them in everything. Then those three who were clothed in white, and who, holding me by my hand, had before caused me to ascend, while the hand of them who spoke held me, raised me up, and placed me in the midst of the sheep before the judgment took place. The sheep were all white with wool, long and pure. Then all who perished and had been destroyed, every beast of the field and every bird of heaven, assembled in that house, while the Lord of the sheep rejoiced with great joy, because all were good, and had come back again to his dwelling. And I saw that they laid down the sword which had been given to the sheep, and returned it to his house, sealing it up in the presence of the Lord. All the sheep would have been enclosed in the house, had it been capable of containing them, and the eyes of all were open, gazing on the good one, nor was there one among them who did not behold him. Likewise, perceived that the house was large, wide, and extremely full. I saw too that a white cow was born, whose horns were great, and that all the beasts of the field and all the birds of the heaven were alarmed, and entreated him at all times. Then I saw that the nature of all of them was changed, and that they became white cows, and that the first, who was in the midst of them, spoke when the word became a large beast upon a head, of which were great and black horns, while the lords of the sheep rejoiced over them and over all the cows. I lay down in the midst of him. I awoke, and I saw the whole. This is the vision which I saw lying down and waking. Then I blessed the Lord of righteousness, and gave glory to him. Afterwards I wept abundantly, nor did my tears cease, so that I became incapable of enduring it. While I was looking on, they flowed on account of what I saw, for all was come and gone by every individual circumstance respecting the conduct of mankind was seen by me. And that night I remembered my former dream, and therefore wept and was troubled, because I had seen that vision. Chapter 90. And now, my son, Methuselah, call to me all thy brethren, and assemble from me all the children of thy mother. For a voice calls me, and the Spirit is poured out upon me, that I may show you everything which shall happen for you forever. Then Methuselah went, called to him all his brethren, and assembled his kindred, and conversing with all his children in truth. Enoch said, Hear, my children, every word of your father, and listen in uprightness to the voice of my mouth, for I would gain your attention while I address you. My beloved, be attached to integrity and walk in it. Approach not integrity with a double heart, nor be associated with double-minded men, but walk, my children, in righteousness, which will conduct you in good paths, and be truth your companion. For I know that oppression will exist and prevail on earth, that on earth great punishment shall in the end take place, and that there shall be a consummation of all iniquity, which shall be cut from its root, and every fabric raised by it shall pass away. Iniquity, however, shall again be renewed and consummated on earth. Every act of crime and every act of oppression and impiety shall be a second time embraced. When therefore iniquity, sin, blasphemy, tyranny, and every evil work shall increase, and when transgressions, impity, and uncleanliness also shall increase, Then upon all shall great punishment be afflicted from heaven. The Holy Lord shall go forth in wrath, and upon them all shall great punishment from heaven be inflicted. The Holy Lord shall go forth in wrath, and with punishment, that he may execute judgment upon earth. In those days oppression shall be cut off from its roots, and iniquity with fraud shall be eradicated, perishing from under heaven. Every place of strength shall be surrendered with its inhabitants. With fire shall it be burnt. They shall be brought from every part of the earth and be cast into a judgment of fire. They shall perish in wrath, and in the judgment overpowering them forever. Righteousness shall be raised up from slumber, and wisdom shall be raised up and conferred upon them. Then shall the roots of iniquity be cut off. Sinners perish by the sword, and blasphemers by annihilated everywhere. Those who mediate oppression and those who blaspheme by the sword shall perish. And now, my children, I will describe and point out to the path of righteousness and the path of oppression. I will again point them out to you, that you may know what is to come. Hear now, my children, and walk the path of righteousness, but shun that of oppression. For all who walk in the path of iniquity shall perish forever. Boy, does that sound like some revelation. And that's why I say this book stands up with Scripture. It's not talking about a different Lord. When it talks about Lord of the Sheep, it's not talking about a different God or the demiurge that controls the Watchers. No, it is all the same story. It is unbelievably beautifully written. And the only true reason I can see it coming out of the canon, and God allowing it to come out of the canyon, is that people who are lukewarm in their faith, I truly do not believe should read the book of Enoch, because they may be almost, they'll be so impressed by it, if that makes sense. They would be so astonished by this new text that isn't in the Bible. They fall into that conspiracy rabbit hole that every single book that was taken out of the Bible is true. And that's how you get to believing things like the Gospel of Judas, which is just plain blasphemy and not true. Things like Jesus had a baby with Mary Magdalene, like Dan Brown liked to make a story about. It was just a story. It was biblical fan fiction. It's like Dante's Divine Comedy, or as many people know, Dante's Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. And it's just sad that fictional things can turn people away from the Lord, who in this book is so straightforward and showed so clearly to Enoch what is to come and what is already here. But humans just weren't ready to have that along, I suppose, with the rest of the Bible. I can't answer why it's not, but I know it stands up next to Scripture, and that's what you're supposed to do, testing with. For this book is quoted in Scripture, but you are not supposed to just blindly believe things because they're old, they've been found. The Gospel of Judas, I think when they found it, it was one piece of paper and has turned into this Gnostic Luciferian scripture that just proves everything in the New Testament wrong. The book of the Bible may have been changed over the year, but God will let no man or spirit ever mess with what we need for salvation. That's just one guy's opinion.